Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. The next hour is all about the entrepreneur, why they start businesses, how they make their businesses grow, how they overcome failures and achieve success. Your host, Bob Gibbons, founder of Riata Commercial Realty, a commercial real estate advisory and tenant advocacy firm. Bob will ask probing questions to find impactful solutions that will help take your business to the next level. And now, here's Bob Gibbons.
So you are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, and let's say you are thinking of ideas and what kind of product, what kind of service. Is it something you know? Is it something you've done before? Or is it just something out of the blue? Well, our guest today is interesting because he based his life work and his entrepreneurial journey based on something that he started doing at 15 years old. That's really unusual. At 15, he started working at a pharmacy. And after doing that for a long time, of course, he decided that that was something he liked and decided to make this his life's work. So Leonard Lynskey is our guest today. We're excited to have you, Leonard. And Leonard has sold that business, and he's gone on to other things that we will get to. But we're going to explore the pharmacy business for a little while first. You're our first pharmacist on the show. Welcome to the show, Leonard.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell me about that. What did you do at 15 in a pharmacy?
So my first job was in a pharmacy, and I started actually as a clerk at the cigarette counter because back in those days, they still sold cigarettes in pharmacies.
That's such an irony, isn't it?
It is.
It
was even more ironic to watch and see the pharmacist smoking while he was filling prescriptions. It was a different time.
It was.
So one Sunday morning, the two technicians were seniors in high school, and they had been to their senior prom the night before, and so they didn't show up to work. Oh. So the pharmacist approached me and asked me if I could type, and when I said I could type, he said, "Well, congratulations, you've just been promoted to pharmacy technician." And that's literally how I got into it. It was just a part-time job. I started working in the pharmacy, and I just fell in love with the idea that I could, as a pharmacist, walk out from behind the counter, make a recommendation to someone about a product or a service, and make their lives and have an immediate impact on their lives for the better. And it just ignited my passion. And so I decided to go to pharmacy school. On top of it, pharmacists back then, there was kind of a retail store on every corner. So pretty much the technicians did all of the work. So we stood around and drank coffee, visited with everybody that walked in, and everybody loved us. It was a perfect job.
Interesting. So where did you grow up?
I was born in San Francisco. We moved to Lubbock when I was in third grade, and then I moved to Dallas to go to high school.
Funny, I lived in San Francisco and moved to Texas to go to college. Actually, my dad retired from the military and became a college professor, and so I came. So that's kind of a bit of a, maybe not in third grade, but in college, it was a bit of a shock to go from a big city like San Francisco to a little tiny Texas town.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that is interesting that you're talking about is my father-in-law went to college in Southern California, and he worked in a pharmacy at that time. This was probably in it must have been the 40s, late 40s, because it was after World War II, and he loved it. And he actually was kind of being groomed to take over the pharmacy and run it, and he loved it. And for the reasons you just said, he loved the interaction, the talking to people, the being able to help them quickly, all those things. Do you feel like that's the same way it is today for pharmacies?
I think that it's a struggle for pharmacists to be as helpful as we were back in the day. Because of the reimbursement pressures, the volumes of prescriptions that go through a typical pharmacy, I think it makes it much more difficult for pharmacists to be as helpful in the way we were back then. Now, what is different, and I think what is improved, is when you go to the pharmacy now, there's a counseling section where you can sit down with the pharmacist and actually learn about the medications, and there's printed materials that comes with it. So I think that the public is much more informed in a much more structured way, but I think the ability to have that ad hoc, off-the-cuff conversation where you can really learn more about the patient and their families and get to know them more personally, I think that has gone away. I just think that the way pharmacists are able to help their patients now is much more structured and formal.
Yeah, that makes
not
sense.
bad, just different.
So when you're 15 and you get this job, did you work your way through high school or work there throughout high school? And then what about in college?
So in college, I worked at a hospital. I worked in a hospital pharmacy I went to college at the University of Houston, and I worked at a hospital pharmacy in a suburb of Houston and put myself through college working in that hospital pharmacy. I mixed IVs and put medication in the patient's receptacles to be administered by the nurses.
So to become a pharmacist, do you have to go to 4 years of college and then go to pharmacy school after that, or is it all wrapped into one?
Now it's a 4-year it's a 4-year pre-pharmacy degree, and then you get a 3-year PharmD degree. And they call them their doctors of pharmacy. When I went to school, it was a 2-year pre-professional program and a 3-year professional program, and you graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy.
Okay. But is there any difference in what they were allowed to do? I mean, if somebody had that degree like you had, are you able to do all the same things that a pharmacist that graduates with a more expansive degree now can do?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. I mean, why does it require so much more today than it used to? Do you have any idea?
There are classes and types of medication that are available to patients now that weren't even thought of when I got out of pharmacy school. It's the breadth and depth of knowledge that they have to know now about what's available in the marketplace. The specialty drugs, there were no specialty drugs. When I got out of pharmacy school, there are no biologicals like Humira for arthritis or the new class of drugs for hepatitis that actually cures hepatitis C.
Right.
There are classes of medications now that are life-saving that weren't even thought of when I got out of pharmacy school. So as I said, the breadth and depth of knowledge that is necessary to be a professional, a pharmacist or a PharmD in this day and age is much, much broader and larger than it was when I got out of school.
Interesting. So you go through college in Houston, you're working in a pharmacy in a hospital, and you go, what do you do when you finally get your degree and you're ready to go work? Do you go hang your own shingle, or do you go work with somebody else? I mean, how do you end up getting into your own business?
So my journey was, one of the reasons I went to pharmacy school was because pharmacies back in 1980 were the second most successful small business in America, behind hardware stores. And this was before Home Depot, and this was before big chains. And so I really wanted to own my own business. And I'd had a paper route, so I've been an entrepreneur probably since I was 10 or 12 years old.
Is that an entrepreneur, really, being a paper boy?
So back then it was. I mean, I bought my papers from the Garland Daily News as a distributor. I paid them for the papers. I bought my own supplies in advance, and I threw the paper all month. And at the end of the month, I went door to door and collected my $1.90 subscription fee. So I had bad debt. I had cash flow issues. I had to have supplies, the rubber bands, the plastic you put the papers in. Exactly. I had to buy bikes, so I had capital expenditures. So I'm telling you, everything I learned about running a business, I kind of learned as a paper boy.
No, that's cool. I like hearing that.
So I got out of college. When I graduated in 1985, I went to work for a hospital in East Texas in Tyler, and did that for a few months. It really wasn't my passion. So there was a gentleman in Tyler who owned a pharmacy in Rusk, Texas, that he was an absentee owner because he had a couple of stores. So I went to work for him at a little independent drugstore on the square in Rusk, Texas. And I ran the store for him for 4 years. And that's really where I got the bug to go out on my own.
Now, Rusk is a pretty small town.
About 5,000 people.
And they could support a pharmacy.
They supported 3 back then.
3 pharmacies in a 5,000-person town? That's unbelievable. I mean, there's 5,000-person towns now that don't even have a pharmacy.
Right. But back then, employers didn't offer, you didn't have to, when you got your drug plan, you didn't have to do mail order pharmacy.
Okay.
So everybody that went to the doctor and got a prescription came into the pharmacy. They didn't even, when I was in Russ, the drug cards had just started coming out. So the school district had drug cards. So maybe 1 out of every 40 prescriptions we filled was paid by a third party. The vast majority of people just came in and wrote a check.
What a difference that is, right? The people had personal responsibility to pay for their own drugs. Now everybody expects their insurance company to do so.
Well, the difference was in 1985, the average prescription cost was probably $5, $5 or $6. So you could come in and get an antibiotic and a cough syrup, and you could get out of the pharmacy for under $10. In 1981, Zantac was the first drug that came out on the market for ulcers, and it was the medication that broke the $1 a pill barrier.
Really?
And now the average branded medication for a 30-day supply is over $140. So it would be extremely difficult for people to just walk in and write a check to pay for their medication and then send that receipt into their insurance company to get reimbursed.
Right. They don't have the cash flow or the what do you call that? The float. They don't have the extra cash to float that until
Right.
they get reimbursed.
Right.
So you got the bug in Rusk to start your own thing. What did you do? How did you go about doing that?
I kind of fell into it accidentally. Now, I will tell you I was on the hunt. So I was constantly looking for opportunities and talking to people and kicking tires and trying to find ways to find a business that I could be successful in, to find the money to finance it. And so I ended up back in Dallas, went to work for a company that specialized in providing medications for transplant patients. And this was back in 1991, and transplant was still really new. There was probably just a handful of centers or hospitals and centers of excellence around the country that did transplants. Mm-hmm. And the company I worked for would still have to get on the phone with insurance companies and say, well, if it's not specifically excluded, it's actually included. You actually have to cover the medication. Because At that time, the medication was really expensive. It was about, the immunosuppressants were about $1,500 a month, and you had to take them forever.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to stop for just a minute, take a quick break, and we'll be right back and start talking more about how you got into it.
Okay.
Okay, we are back talking to Leonard Lynskey. And Leonard, by the way, we're talking about his pharmacy business, but he is actually the founder of Lynskey Management Services now. And you can find them on the web at lynskeymanagement.com. And Lynskey is spelled Lynskey. So, Leonard, you were talking about how, you're now in 1991 and you're thinking about trying to find a way to get into your own business. So please continue with that.
So I was working in the transplant field with this company out of New York, and I opened their Dallas office, and one of the feeder pathologies, if you will, into transplant is, from the kidney standpoint, is dialysis. And there was, in 1995, 20,000 dialysis patients in the state of Texas. They had a little-known benefit called Texas Kidney Health, whereby Kidney Health would pay for their medications that were related to their dialysis or their kidney transplant. The company I worked for, specializing in transplant, they didn't want to do the dialysis patients for whatever reason. And so I saw an opportunity. And because it was 100% reimbursed with no copay, no out-of-pocket from the patients, I could bill the state directly. I worked with the Texas Kidney Health Fund in the state of Texas, got permission to be a vendor, and opened my first pharmacy, got licensed and all of that, opened the pharmacy, because I'd done it for other people, so I knew how.
But you're only like 28, 29 years old at this point?
30.
30 years old. Okay.
33, 60, 80, 96.
So you worked for the New York company for a while.
For about 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, for about 5 years. So what we offered was we found an underserved niche in our market. And I think that's one of the keys to success is if I'd have just gone out and just opened another pharmacy, I think it would have been harder. But we identified a need that was underserved and came up with a unique way to fill it.
And these were going to be chronic patients.
Chronic
they were going to
patients.
need this service from you, these medications for
Ever.
indefinitely, yeah. So it's not just get over the cold and you're done.
Correct. So our unique proposition, if you will, or our sales proposition was we would go into the dialysis centers, because typically dialysis patients would go to the pharmacy, write a check for their medications, send them the receipts into Kidney Health, and Kidney Health would reimburse them. Well, they were taking $400 or $500 a month worth of medication. Most of these clients are on Medicare. They're poor. They didn't have the money. And so compliance was a huge issue. So by us getting permission to bill Texas Kidney Health directly, we could then go into the dialysis centers and say, look, we'll take your clients, we'll send them their 6 medications, we'll bill Kidney Health, they can get their medicine without having to pay for it. You can increase compliance, which then increases the efficiencies of the dialysis and the therapeutic outcome. And all you got to do is tell your patients about us, and we'll sign them up and start sending their medication. And so we grew from startup in February of 1996 to our last month in business before we sold was April of 98, and we did just over $800,000 in 2 years. So we were on about a $10 million revenue run.
So that was two years?
2 years.
So in 2 years, you go from 0 to 800,000
a month in
a
sales.
month. That's amazing. So obviously these dialysis places really liked what you were doing. They saw it as a real good partnership.
Right. We had a 40% market share.
But now I got to believe that there was some significant cash flow issues with this, because if you're billing the state, they're probably not going to be paying you on a net 15 days.
No.
So how did you come up with all the cash to float this?
So I had a partner who financed the money up front initially. And then what we did is we went to our vendor and we said, look, we need our top 20 inventory items. We need 90 days dating. And then we explained the concept to them. And I had a prior relationship being in management positions with other pharmacies. And I said, so look, these folks are like annuity, because you get 10 clients in January and they bill $5,000. And then in February they bill $5,000, and then the 10 new clients in February bill $5,000. So now I'm at $10,000, and then so on and so on and so on. But they never, as long as you provide a good service, they never went away. And so as long as you're growing, and we really financed it. We financed the growth through our wholesaler.
Okay.
Because we could pay, we would get with 90 days dating, the top 20% of our items was about 60% of our inventory dollar. And so we could use that float to pay for the invoices that were coming due currently.
Okay.
Worked great as long as you were growing. And we
Now,
sold before we stopped growing. So the cash flow issues that we should have run into, we never did, because we sold before we stopped growing.
so whenever you're building this thing, what's your footprint? Are you doing this nationally, or are you doing
Just
this
in Texas.
just in Texas?
Yeah.
Okay, but Texas is a big state.
There were 20,000 dialysis patients in the state of Texas, and when we sold, we had about 8,000.
Wow, so you had a huge market share. So who was servicing the other 12,000?
It was they were just scattered into the community. They'd go to Walgreens or a local pharmacy. But the problem was these pharmacies weren't able to, or unwilling to, let the patients have the medication and then bill Texas Kidney Health on their behalf and wait on the money. And so that was really our value proposition, is we could dispense and then bill on the back end, and then we took all the financial risks.
I mean, that's such a beautiful model. I love what you're doing. You're having your vendor, your wholesaler, float you. You're getting paid by, or your client, I should say, is having their service paid by the state. So, they're happy. I mean, it's your classic win-win kind of thing. But I still got to think. I mean, you're having to ramp up employees and hire a lot of people, and they're going to be geographically dispersed all around the state. How did you manage that? The hiring and the management.
Well, it's one of the reasons the company that I left got bought, and so 18 months after we opened, they came and approached us to buy us.
Right.
And so the reality was, I had the 2:00 a.m. question. I'm sitting up in my kitchen at 2:00 in the morning, and I'm going, how do I fill in the blank. I mean, the five biggest struggles is profit, not enough profit or cash, getting the right people in the right seats, me controlling the business rather than the business controlling me, trying to figure out what the next steps are. And so it was really difficult. And I can remember, we churned through employees. We didn't have any processes, and it was just dumb luck.
So how many people did you end up having working on your payroll by the end of that 2-year period?
By the end of the 2 years, we had about 20. I think we had about 25 employees, and had we the blessing of all of this was that we just kept growing. So we were adding. While we were doing this, in addition to dialysis, we started adding transplant patients. So we were adding 3 and 4 transplant patients a month and 50 and 60 dialysis patients a month. So we were growing, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month in revenue.
Wow.
So as long as you're growing, and I had 90 days dating. So when I would fill a prescription in September, I didn't have to pay for it until December. And so I could get the money, I could send the bills, and I could get the money in November before it came due in December. So as long as you're going up, you're not experiencing cash flow issues because you're growing, and what you're billing is what you are putting off paying is larger than the money that's coming in.
Yeah.
What I learned in my subsequent business is once that level's off and you don't have that fresh cash coming in to finance that, that's when you start running into cash flow issues. And if you start losing business is more expensive than growing business because now you've got $1 million worth of invoices to pay for with $800,000 worth of business when you start shrinking. So I didn't get to learn that lesson in my first business. It was all rosy. And then before a lot of these issues really started weighing on us because we grew so fast and we sold so quickly. I mean, we sold 26 months after we opened. So none of the traditional issues that most entrepreneurs deal with, I had to deal with because we got out so quickly.
Okay.
And somebody else cleaned up my mess.
So you get a phone call and they want to buy you. What was your thought process at that point? Was your decision to sell really hey, this gets me out of these problems, or was it, I'm going to be able to cash out and make such a lot of money, I'm happy?
No, my decision to sell was I woke up every morning and my expense line was about $90,000 a month. And so I woke up every morning, and when my feet hit the floor, I'd spent $5,000. And it just weighed on me. And really, we had all of these growth issues that were compounding. We were starting to have service issues. We were starting to have delivery issues. Our wholesaler was starting to get nervous about, it was great when we were going from 30 to 60,000 a month in sales, but when you're going from 650 to 670 and you've got 90 days dating, so that means, if your trade debt is $700,000 a month and you're 90 days into them, you owe them $2 million. Well, my AR was never $2 million. So I always owed more than my accounts receivable. So I always was negative. And so as you start growing, the wholesalers start, your vendors start taking a dim view of that, because if they have to take you back over, there's nothing left to take.
So help me understand this then. Your wholesaler is floating you.
Right.
So you have $700,000 a month and that you're going to owe him whenever that comes due. But aren't you marking it up? I mean, where's your profit? Why don't you have more money and have plenty of money to pay? Because now you not only have a markup, but you also have float. So you could have used that money, interest or whatever in that period of time. Were you just having to spend all your money? It kind of almost, I'm not going to say that. You're having to pay everything just to keep the doors open, and that it's costing you more than the profit that you're earning?
Well, so the margins are about in pharmacy. The good and the bad of an annuity type business like this in pharmacy is that while you're building this business, it's coming around every month regularly. The bad news is it's kind of like being a farmer, right? You take the drugs to the payer, which is the federal government, and you say, what's it worth? And it's never worth as much to them as you'd like. So our margin was about 20%.
Okay. We'll pick this up after the break.
Hi, this is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty. If your office lease is going to be expiring in the next year or two, the one thing I would tell you definitely do not want to do is exercise a renewal option. Now, that may sound a little nuts. When you negotiate for that renewal option, why wouldn't you actually want to use it? Well, the reason is because while you want to have one as a reservation for your space so the landlord can't lease the space out from under you, that option may not actually work the way you want it to now. It may have made sense 5 years ago, but it doesn't today. The only thing that changes when you exercise a renewal option are the expiration date and the rent. But you may want to do other things like have another option to renew, have an option to terminate or expand. You may want to be able to expand now or have a new base year for your operating expenses. There's all kinds of things that need to be considered. So we recommend that you renegotiate, not renew. For more information, contact me, Bob Gibbons, at texastenantrep.com. That's texastenantrep.com.
Okay, we're back talking to Leonard Lynskey, Lynskey Management, and you can find him at lynskeymanagement.com. Lynskey, again, is spelled Lynskey. So, Leonard, I'm sorry I'm going to press you a little further on this because I'm just maybe not smart enough to understand this. So let's just take the quick scenario. You sell a bunch of medications in January.
Right.
And you get paid for those in March.
Right.
But because of your wholesale financing situation with your wholesaler, you don't actually have to pay for those drugs until April.
Correct.
So you collect your money in March, you pay for it in April. For February, you gave the drugs in February, you collected the money in April, you pay your vendor in May.
Right.
So it seems like at any given time, you have this rolling thing where you're collecting your money before you have to pay for those drugs that were sold. And so you're always going to have the money to pay for that inventory.
Right.
And you have your profit margin. So you have a profit margin that's going to pay for your overhead and provide you your profit.
Right.
So where was the downside to the business? And so why were you willing to sell whenever that came? It looks like a beautiful model.
Well, I was 33 years old. It was overwhelming. I mean, we were making money,
Okay.
but it was just overwhelming. And so the opportunity and when I looked out and thought, okay, well, if I'm on a $10 million revenue run now, and I'm going to go to 20 million, I didn't think I had the skills to do it.
Okay.
And so really, it was kind of frightening.
So
to be
selling was
perfectly
really
candid.
So the selling was really more because of you didn't believe in yourself,
Right.
and you weren't willing to take that stress.
Didn't know how
it
to.
wasn't really the financing
No.
issue. So how did you price the sale of the business?
We sold it to a strategic buyer, to our competitor, and we got 17 times earnings.
And
Either
how did that? I mean, why 17? Was there some logic behind that, or?
So the truth of the matter is, when the company came in to buy us and we were having the initial conversation and they were going to present the original offer, my wife, who was my business partner, we were a family business. My wife, who was my business partner, sat through the first 2 or 3 hours, and then she got up and she looked at the CFO of the acquiring company and she said, "I think I've heard enough," and she walked out.
Oh, that's a.
And so I followed her into her office, and I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm done listening to these guys." She said, "They think we're idiots, and I think they're going to screw you, and I don't want any part of it." And I said, "Well, what do I do? Because we're supposed to go to dinner, and they've got this whole agenda laid out." And she wrote a number on a piece of paper, and she said, "I don't care what you do, but don't come home without this number."
Wow.
So after we sold the business, I was in the CFO's office, and actually, so when we sold the business, they wanted to close by April 15. There was some tax consequences that were in their favor if we closed, that they could book it to the previous year. And so when we closed, he said, "We got to catch a flight." They were out of Pittsburgh. "We got to catch a flight. Come see me in my office on Friday. I'll give you a check." And I said, "Okay." So I called my wife and I said, "Look, we finally got all the deals done. We're running for the airport. I'm going to buy clothes while I'm in Pittsburgh. I'll be back on Friday." And she said, "Don't come home without a check." And so when I went into his office on Friday to get the check, he said, "The way this is supposed to work is we negotiate. So You give me a price, I give you a price. You give me a price, I give you a price. I said, I understand, Jim, but my wife said this was the number. And he said, yeah, I get it. We're all a little afraid of her.
Wow, that's awesome. So you sell the business. Do you continue operating the business? Or
I stayed with them. That company eventually got bought by CVS. I ended up as an area vice president for a division of CVS that at the time was called ProCare. And I ended up managing 25 specialty pharmacy, closed-door pharmacies, 21 specialty closed-door pharmacies, and 4 retail pharmacies in 21 states. So I had 25 patients. I managed about a $400 million revenue line.
So let me get this straight. You feel the stress of running this business, so you sell it, but you stay to run it and take on bigger responsibilities when it gets further required by CVS. So now you're not the owner, but you're still doing something similar. Do you not still have all the same stresses, or does the bigger company alleviate a lot of the stress that you have?
Well, the stress that I didn't have was, if CVS made a mistake, they don't come get my house.
Yeah, so it wasn't you on the line.
It wasn't me on the line.
Okay.
The bigger stress was once you've owned your own business and worked for yourself, it's really, really hard to work for somebody else.
Yeah, I was about to ask that. So CVS is a giant company. How did that go?
Not well.
Really? What happened?
So the first company that bought us, I got promoted to a regional manager, and I managed 5 or 6 stores. They had a great culture. It was the company that bought me. They had a great culture. I liked the organization. CVS bought Statlanders, and it became CVS. They're a very successful company, but they had a little bit different take on how they do things, and it was a culture I didn't mesh with personally.
Yeah.
And it was much more structured and much less entrepreneurial. They didn't make quick decisions. Nobody flies by the seat of their pants.
Yeah.
I mean, they're successful for a reason.
Yeah. But they're not entrepreneurial.
But they're not entrepreneurial, and it just wasn't a good fit for me. So
Okay.
They asked me to stay 6 months, and so I stayed the time they asked me to stay, and then I moved on.
So where'd you move to?
So I went to work for a small regional chain pharmacy. I was just going to be a pharmacist for a while and practice pharmacy in a store, and after about 3 months, I got bored. So my daughter, my wife, and I started another pharmacy. We started Saxe Pharmacy, which was a local retail pharmacy in Saxe, Texas. And we were just going to sell ice cream and make deliveries and compound, and we were going to be kind of a throwback to a regular old-time retail pharmacy. The problem was the market had passed us by, and that wasn't really a viable market any longer, with very few exceptions. So in 2004, a nurse walked in and said, I've got these 4 clients that live they're intellectually and developmentally disabled. They live in halfway houses, and we need service. And so we started servicing these IDD patients that lived in halfway houses, which are like small nursing homes.
Yeah, they're in residential areas.
Residential areas, 4 beds in the house. Again, like dialysis, it was an underserved market. We saw an opportunity. And so
what was the service that they needed that they weren't getting by coming to a retail pharmacy?
They needed their drugs delivered in a unique packaging. They needed the medications delivered consistently and on time. The medications were expensive. Some of the medications like Zyprexa and Strattera, some of them were $30 and $40 a tablet. So they needed a consistent, on-time delivery of medication without interruption. There were some value adds that they needed as an industry that they couldn't get from maybe a local pharmacy. And so through the use of technology, we figured out how to address some of their issues and their needs. And so we sold the retail pharmacies. We closed the doors and rebranded as Complete Pharmacy Care, and we focused solely on providing medications for IDD patients in Texas.
No, wait a minute. How quickly did you do that? She walks in and she tells you there's this need. What kind of due diligence did you do to make sure that there was a demand that would sustain a full business before selling the retail?
So those 4 clients were connected to a company that had, in one house, were connected to a company that had 6 other houses in Dallas. That was connected to an organization that had locations in Houston and Austin, San Antonio. The woman we originally worked with at that first location moved to an county MHMR, and they had 12 homes that they called us, and we started servicing. So very quickly, we went from these 4 clients in one house to 60 clients in 12 houses with 3 different companies. And then we kind of started looking around and realized that we might be onto something.
So this is deja vu. You saw the opportunity the first time and you ran after that. It's the same thing the second time. So what did you do the second time differently than you did the first time to make sure you didn't end up in the same stressful situation that you weren't comfortable with?
I did it exactly the same way. We grew really fast. My answer, I'm a visionary, so my answer to every growth problem is get more clients, hire more people, and throw more money at it.
Okay.
And we grew from about $2 million in sales in 2007 to $32 million in sales in 2011.
Oh my goodness, 4 years.
4 years. And while it looked awesome on the outside, we were on the Inc. 5000 list 5 years in a row. Everybody loved to hear my story. The reality was we were a mess on the inside. Because unlike last time, we didn't sell early. The growth leveled off, and we even started to drop because of the service issues we were starting to experience. And then we really started running into all of the issues that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with: cash flow and consistent service levels, and keeping clients, and finding the right people, and building the right processes, and creating processes in the organization so that you could be consistent and scalable.
Okay. So it's a family business again.
Family business again, my wife and my daughter and I.
And so how big did it get in terms of people?
At our peak, we had 60 people.
So 60 people are doing $32 million in sales. That seems like a lot.
Well, pharmacy is very transactional, and our average prescription was, I think, $141. So, we were filling about 20,000 prescriptions a month.
So what'd you do with that company?
Well, at the end of 2011, our largest wholesaler, our largest vendor, was about ready to foreclose on us because we were 50 days behind in our payables. And we were stuck. I didn't know what to do. I mean, it was and this time we weren't in a financial position to be able to sell the company because we owed more than it was worth. So a friend of mine, I was in a group called Vistage, which is a CEO peer group. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine in my Vistage group said, hey, I'm implementing EOS, and you need to look into this. So in August of 2012, we started implementing EOS, which really is – and EOS is an entrepreneurial operating system. It's simple tools and discipline designed to help you get a grip on your business. And it's just step-by-step improving your business. So we started implementing EOS in August of 2012. By end of 2013, we were break even. And by the end of 2016, we had a profitable exit.
Awesome. What a great ending to this segment. So we're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So Leonard, you built this company to $32 million. You're about to be foreclosed, and you find out about this EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. What was it about that? You said it was simple tools and all that, but what was it about that allowed you to keep this company, your vendor, from foreclosing on you? And you said over about a 16-month period, you got to break even, but you still had to hold them off. So how did you do that?
So we brought in a fractional CFO who was really good at just being upfront with everybody, and he just kept telling the story, and our numbers kept getting better. As we started implementing EOS, our numbers started getting better. Gerald, our fractional CFO, was very credible. He was an older guy, close to retirement age. He was very credible, and as he would tell the story of how we were improving, and we would hit these very short milestones that we had and start improving, then our vendors began to believe in us. Okay. We stabilized our client base. We stopped losing patients. We purposely did not grow so that we could clean up our internal mess.
Okay. Wow.
And then we just got better.
So bringing in a credible executive CFO fractional, that really made a huge difference. So by 2016, you're stabilized, you're back to break even. What ended up happening to that company?
So at the end of in 2000, we made the decision that there were some changes in healthcare, which are healthcare is a challenging business. There were some changes in healthcare. I'm 56. My daughter is 41. We kind of looked down the road, and really we thought, with the way healthcare is going, I didn't think that a small regional pharmacy in Rowlett, Texas, would necessarily have a seat at the table 10 years from now.
Yeah.
There are other people that do, and they've got fresher legs and stronger backs than me, and so we found somebody with fresh legs and a strong back that was in our same segment, and we did a strategic sale and sold out.
Interesting. So 2 successful sales after near disaster. So
Yep.
that's exciting. So you must think a lot of EOS.
So I do, and the reason is this. When I was I'm a pharmacist by training, and I'm pretty good at pharmacy. I can run a pharmacy in my sleep. Visage taught me how to think like a leader, but what I needed was a system, someone or something to come in and tell me step by step how to run a business. I'm a pharmacist. I'm not a business person. I don't have any business background. So I'm pretty good at the widget, not great at the organization. EOS gave me the tools. It's a how-to manual.
Yeah.
It was how to make my business better so that I could get control of my business.
So EOS is based on the book Traction by Gino Wickman, and he's written that book, and it's become a pretty big movement within the entrepreneurial world. And we've had Jeff Whittle on the show. He's an EOS implementer. We've had Tommy O'Donnell on the show. He's an EOS implementer. So, you now have Lynskey Management Services. So what is it that Lynskey Management Services does?
So I'm an EOS implementer. So I help.
I knew that.
I help small companies answer the 2 a.m. question. I work with leadership teams to help them get better. And the goal of EOS is you get vision, traction, and healthy. Vision is just getting everybody on your leadership team and in your organization on the same page with where you're going, how you're going to get there. Traction is executing that vision with discipline and accountability throughout your whole organization. And healthy is just everybody all of your employees are open and honest. They're engaged and they're working together to execute that vision.
Yeah, they're all rowing in the same direction.
All rowing in the same direction.
Maybe not with the same oar, but with the one that's appropriate to their position.
Right.
So let me ask you a very maybe insensitive question, but the first company you had, you weren't comfortable with, it was very stressful. It just wasn't a good fit for your personality and what you like doing, so you sold that company. The second company is about to go under until you get your fractional CFO and you discover EOS. So what makes you the right guy to implement EOS for other companies?
I've lived it. I've walked in their shoes. I know what it is to sit at the kitchen table at 2 o'clock in the morning and go, I don't know what to do about. And so I think that the empathy that I bring, the knowledge, having lived through such a tumultuous period with the business. Now, I will say with my first business, had I had EOS, I probably would not have sold. Because I would have had a way forward.
Yeah.
The second business, I had to find a way forward because it was either that or go bankrupt. And we were kind of too stupid to fail.
I doubt that.
And so I think that and then I've also worked in I've worked for CVS. I ran a $400 million division. So I think I have a breadth of experience, and having successfully implemented EOS in my own company along with all of my other unique business and entrepreneurial experiences, makes me uniquely.
So what kind of what does the ideal client look like for your EOS implementation business?
Entrepreneurial-led companies, 10 to 250 employees who want to grow and who want to change. People who are more afraid of the status quo than they are of change.
Interesting. So you don't care what industry they're in?
It's industry agnostic.
So any service, product, consumer, or business focused, doesn't matter. Anybody can benefit from this.
Anybody can benefit.
Yeah, because it's not and I know about EOS, of course, and I've read the book, and I think a lot of it. But what's the first step whenever somebody says, I'm thinking about needing that? I think I need that. What do I do first? Do I go read the book? Do I just call you?
Just call an implementer. Call me. And what we do is we will sit down with the leadership team, and we have what we call a 90-minute workshop. And what we do is we lay out EOS and how it works and what it looks like being implemented in your company. And the goal is 2 things: is to make sure that EOS is right for your organization, and that I'm the right fit to lead you on your EOS journey.
So wait a minute. So there are a bunch of EOS implementers out there, so they're not each one going to be the best choice for any company?
We all have our each individual unique style and our own strengths and weaknesses. So I think it's really important that you find the right fit. It's kind of like, it's kind of like dating, right? Marriage is marriage, but finding the right partner. And
so it's more of a personality thing?
It's more of a personality thing.
I got you.
We all teach the information in the same way. We don't teach in the same way. Let me rephrase that. We teach the same information. We all do it with our own personal style and spin. And so it's really important that you have an implementer that you mesh with.
Yeah. Well, and each of you have your own journey, and you've had a different experience in a different industry. So, so does that? But that doesn't really matter then. Just because you came from the pharmacy industry doesn't mean that you have to stay within that sort of healthcare lane. You can go to any other lane. It's just whether or not your skills and your experience fits and your personality fits with that prospective client.
That's correct.
And do your clients have to be here locally, close to where you live?
No, I'll travel. I'm happy to travel anywhere that there's a need.
Okay, so it's a nationwide thing then.
Yeah.
Okay. You might want to get one in the islands too.
There you go.
I actually had a client once that was going to open up a business in St. Thomas Virgin Islands. And so I helped them with their real estate needs down there. And I had all these great plans that I was going to go down there every year and write it off. But sadly, that business never happened. So I never got to do that. But okay, so your ideal client is 10 to 250 employees. Doesn't matter what industry they're in. So what's the first thing you do whenever you meet with them? You mentioned the 90-minute workshop, but what does that really entail?
It really just entails explaining EOS in depth. There are 6 key components that every business shares, and to the extent that we strengthen those 6 key components, your business will improve. So we get you strong on your vision component, so that everybody knows where you're going, how you're going to get there. We make sure the organization is running on data rather than emotion. So you're making decisions based on objective information rather than I think or I feel. We, Jim Collins says it's critical to get everybody, the right people in the right seats. But what he doesn't tell you is how to do that. And we have tools and disciplines to help you make sure that you've got the right people in the right seats in your organization. We help you. You can't be a great organization if you can't solve your issues as they arise. And we've got tools that'll help you solve your issues once and for all permanently. We help you systemize your business by creating a set of core processes. And then we bring that vision down to the ground and execute it with what we call traction, which is just the discipline and accountability behind executing your vision.
Okay. Now, I know in EOS I've heard of this thing called rocks. What are rocks? So
rocks are one of the pieces of the vision, and basically what we do is it's a set of quarterly priorities that your leadership team sets every quarter. You pick 3 to 7 rocks or quarterly priorities that are important for the organization to get done in the next 90 days, and then each member of the leadership team will take a set of rocks as well. And eventually you migrate that down into the entire organization so that everybody in the organization has at least 1 rock a quarter, and you just focus on those.
So this is not just something that the top brass ownership deals with. You take this throughout the entire organization with every employee? You
will eventually embed EOS throughout your entire organization so that, like for the scorecard, for example, eventually as you get it ingrained into your organization, every employee in your company will have a number or a measurable. So they'll be responsible for something that allows you to keep a pulse on your business and know if you're heading in the, if you're on track to make whatever KPIs you're managing. Every person in the organization will have a rock. Every person in the organization will have access to an issue list so that when they have an issue or an opportunity, they can get it on a list somewhere so that they make sure that issue is processed, that the employee's thought is heard and addressed.
So it sounds like it really creates a system of accountability, authority. So everybody knows their responsibility and what their authority is, but that also then makes them accountable to the organization for that at every level, not just the employees, but also the owners become accountable.
Absolutely. It creates a culture of accountability in your organization.
Interesting. Well, Leonard, thank you so much for being with us on the show today. I really enjoyed your story, and it's exciting. So listeners, please go to lynskeymanagement.com. And again, Lynskey is Lynskey. And you can learn more about what Leonard does and how it can be of great benefit to your business. If you want to know more about the show, please go to thenextlevelshow.com, and you can find us on podcast or YouTube at The Next Level Show. Just search that term, and we'll be back next week with another great guest. Thanks so much.